Today I decided to throw on my Math is Easy shirt. I often also call it my totally not to scale shirt. Enough talking about my shirt. Today I want to talk to you guys about STEVED, which is a series that I worked on and released in 2019. And it's going to continue, hopefully, in 2020. But I figured while you guys are waiting, I could give you guys a little bit of a deep dive into how STEVED came about. The basic rundown of the series, Season 1, is that I play myself, or a version of myself, and I'm stuck in a house with other characters that look exactly like me, and are versions of me, and are obviously played by me. And basically, we don't really remember how we got into the house, and we try to find out a way to get out of the house, while at the same time trying to live with each other. Those of you who've been following me for a really long time know that STEVED is not the first thing I've ever worked on. I've been making my own videos and editing my own videos and short films since I was about 10 years old. So it was definitely not my first time trying to do something like this, but it was my first time in a very long time. Because in recent years, I've switched to doing more movie review related content and nonfiction content. This was going to be my first fiction series in a while, and basically the idea came to me based off of shorts that I had done and skits that I had done roughly 2015, 2016-ish, in which I experimented with making videos in which I would interact with clones of myself. And those got fairly positive reception, and people were asking me whatever happened to those and why don't you make those anymore. So I was basically like, why don't I make those anymore? So I figured, okay, I can come up with a series idea based off of this, and I actually did have an idea of where I wanted the story to go in my head, because this wasn't just going to be a series of random skits like those other videos that I had made in the past were going to be. This was going to actually have somewhat of a semblance of a plot that would carry from episode to episode. So, back in the spring of 2019, I started writing out scripts for how each episode would go down. And I wanted it to have that homegrown feel that a lot of my other shorts did in the past, which obviously meant that I could get away with doing some really, really low budget things. You guys have probably noticed something sitting in the background here, and I'm just gonna bring it to the foreground. This is a great book, Rebel Without a Crew, the story of Robert Rodriguez and how he made El Mariachi when he was 23 years old with a very, very minimal crew and with only around $7,000, and the film became a smash hit. Basically, the point of him making this book and putting together his thoughts in this book was that you shouldn't have to think that you have to have a gigantic budget to make something fun or make something that people want to watch. If you have an idea and you feel like you can execute it and you actually plan out how you're going to do it beforehand, and you can do it quickly, and you can apply that imagination and actually understand the technical aspects at the same time, then you are unstoppable. You can do pretty much anything you want as long as you know how to use those resources that are at your disposal. And that's basically how I've always gone about it. So I decided to do that with STEVED. And since I knew that I wanted it to have a little homegrown feel, I wanted it to not be this giant big budget production, and I knew that with the very limited resources that I had, which was just basically my phone, which I'm using to make this video now, some lighting equipment, some costumes, and myself as a cameraman and pretty much the only crew member, I was thinking to myself, it will be probably a little bit difficult, but as long as I keep at it, I can do this. So the end of the summer comes and it's getting to September, and I'm like, I've got the equipment that I need, I've got the scripts, I've got the costumes, let's go ahead and start shooting this bad boy. So in early September of 2019, I start shooting a scene in the first episode, which I think is going to be the most complicated shot. In the beginning of season 1, in the very first episode, it opens with my character and the character of Stevie B, also me, in costume, playing piano together. And it starts out with this big argument. You see them all in one shot just kind of storming up the stairs and walking away from each other and arguing. And then it culminates with a piano duet between myself and the character of Stevie B.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's one of the things that I often got comments on And people often pointed out, you can tell a lot of work went into that. And it did. And here's kind of how it went down. So I basically just used 2 lights, which was a mistake, I will admit, but I'll get to that later. I moved the keyboard that we used as the piano we were playing on away from the wall a little bit, because normally it just sits right up against the wall on that loft that is actually my house. But what we ended up doing was we moved the keyboard back a little bit, and I set up the tripod right behind the keyboard, and I just set my phone on that tripod because I have an adapter that hooks up to the tripod that I can set my phone on like I'm doing now. But the other thing that actually added quite a bit was I put a wide-angle lens on the camera on the phone. Now, a lot of people are like, they make camera lenses for phones? Yeah, they do. I ended up ordering a Zenvo lens kit, and it's not the greatest lens known to man, but it's actually way better than you would expect when you hear about a lens that you can put on a camera phone. Like, I was very skeptical of how it was going to work, but it ended up working really well. So I start shooting the scene, and I start shooting the part with Stevie B. And basically, he goes up the stairs, he goes back into the room, he comes back out, he sits down at the piano, and now is where the hardest part ever comes in. So basically, I knew the camera, which I was using to record my vocal audio, was not going to cut it for recording the piano audio, because if the camera is right behind the keyboard, number one, you can't be behind the audio source, it's not going to work, and number two, the keyboard's right there. The speakers are right next to the camera. That's gonna sound terrible. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of audio recording equipment, so what I did was I took an auxiliary cord, hooked it up to my laptop, put the laptop underneath the keyboard, turned the volume all the way up on the laptop, and set it up so that I could hear what I was playing on the piano. So I recorded the piano audio from the line in, and then saved that to a file. And then I opened that in a sound recording software so I could see the peaks of where the audio was. And when I was actually filming the scene where I was playing, I wasn't hearing anything. I was simply watching the peaks to see where things were happening and what keys I needed to hit at which time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ah, crap, I messed up. All right, one more. Hopefully this will be the one. And as you could probably guess, when I'm trying to rush the shoot and do that at the same time, it was extraordinarily hard and numerous mistakes were made. All right. I wasn't recording. All right, recording audio now. So, let's do this. And then after numerous takes of messing it up, I finally get it. So I change out of my costume and I go back into the Steve costume and I start that scene from scratch too. I start going up, I have the argument with Stevie B, I go back out, I come see Stevie B playing, and then eventually it gets to the part where I have to play along with the music. So I'm like, okay, that's a wrap, we can do this. And I go ahead and start editing the footage. And then I realize how many mistakes I've made. So basically, the idea was to use a bunch of masking and use cropping techniques and masking techniques to meld the scene together so that it looked like the shots of me and Stevie B would meld together really well, and it would look like we were both playing the piano at the same time. But the problem was, when I was playing Steve, I stepped into the line of sight that Stevie B was in. And the problem with that is that I'm gonna end up cutting pieces of myself off in the shot where I'm Steve if I keep using that. So basically, I ruined the shot, the lighting wasn't right, and I had to reshoot the thing all over again. So I did that on another day, but it took a little bit less time because I knew what mistakes I'd made the first time. Now, a lot of people think that when I put these scenes together, I basically just cut the screen in half and call it a day. But no, that's not what I did, because there were a lot of lighting changes throughout the scenes. So basically, what I had to do was I had to up the brightness for a few seconds in some of the shots. I had to, the picture in the middle of the scene, I had to crop that out, make it its own mask. It was little stuff like that. I mean, those little simple touches, while it doesn't look perfect, they really helped make the scene actually look like we were playing the piano with each other. And then on another day, I decided to shoot the rest of the episode because shooting that one scene tired me out pretty quickly. And then eventually, I got the episode all edited together. And I was like, all right, we're ready to release this thing. And that was the biggest mistake I made in the making of STEVED Season 1, because what I should have done was shot all of the episodes and edited all the episodes beforehand and just released one a week. But instead, I made the mistake of editing the first episode, and I had shot other episodes but hadn't edited them yet. So I only edited one full episode, released that, and made a promise that I was going to release an episode per week. I ended up basically turning the editing of STEVED episodes in Season 1 into another full-time job on top of my actual full-time job. And in a way that kind of helped because I had to think of this as a job and I had to get it done. The caveat was it ended up with lower production value than I could have had if I really put the time and effort in. For example, the lighting isn't too bad, but in terms of color correction, the shots don't look as good as they could have because there is no color correction. I didn't have time to actually go in and do color correction on any of the shots pretty much, except for ones where I'm blending stuff together and I had to change the lighting. And the audio was terrible. I didn't use a microphone, I just used onboard camera audio for pretty much all of it.
Get thee to a nunnery. What's a nunnery?
It's a place you should probably go to. And by the way, these characters are Danish. You shouldn't be using a British accent.
I had to do something with my voice.
And it led to some very stressful shoots, I'll admit. I mean, the very last episode, I'm actually kind of proud of this, oddly enough, because it ended up turning out great for something like this, but I literally shot that episode in less than an hour. It had no script whatsoever, and by the way, another thing that happened with most of the episodes is that none of them abided by the scripts that I had written. They basically turned into improvisational episodes as it went along. But the very last one had no script at all, like not even an itinerary, and I shot the entire thing in less than an hour. What I take away from STEVED Season 1 was not only was it fun, but at the same time stressful to make, but it taught me a lot. And basically, from that learning experience, I want to apply what I learned in the making of STEVED Season 1 into the making of STEVED Season 2. I want to actually produce something good for you guys to watch. And I'm not saying STEVED Season 1 is bad by any stretch of the word. I actually really enjoyed making it and really enjoyed the finished product. But I recognize the places where there is massive room for improvement. And I want to improve upon that stuff in Season 2, and I think one of the biggest things that'll help is the longer amount of time. So what I'm hoping so far is that STEVED Season 2 will come out sometime in the fall of 2020, but I'll keep you guys posted on that. With that being said, that's it for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a great day, and I'll see you later.